Secure Digital is a non-volatile memory card format for use in portable devices, such as mobile phones, digital cameras, GPS navigation devices, handheld consoles, and tablet computers. The Secure Digital standard was introduced in August 1999 as an evolutionary improvement over MultiMediaCards. The Secure Digital standard is maintained by the SD Association. SD technologies have been implemented in more than 400 brands across dozens of product categories and more than 8,000 models. The Secure Digital format includes 4 card families available in 3 different form factors. The 4 families are the original standard capacity, the high capacity, the extended capacity, and the SDIO, which combines input-output functions with data storage. The 3 form factors are the original size, the mini size, and the micro size. Electrically passive adapters allow the use of a smaller card in a host device built to hold a larger card. There are many combinations of form factors and device families, although as of 2013, the prevailing formats are full or micro-size Sdhc and full micro Sdxc. The SDA uses several trademark logos to enforce compliance with its specifications and assure users of compatibility. Overview: SD, the first-generation Secure Digital card was developed to improve on the multimedia card standard. The SD cards changed the MMC design in several ways. Asymmetrical slots in the sides of the SD card prevent inserting it upside down, while an MMC goes in most of the way but makes no contact if inverted. Most SD cards are 2.1 mm thick, compared to 1.4 mm for MMCs. The SD specification defines a card called thin SD with a thickness of 1.4 mm, but they are rare, as the SDA went on to define even smaller form factors. The card's electrical contacts are recessed beneath the surface of the card, protecting them from contact with the user's fingers. The SD specification envisioned capacities and transfer rates exceeding those of MMC, and these have both grown over time. For a comparison table, see below. Full-sized SD cards do not fit in the slimmer MMC slots, and there are other issues that affect the ability to use one format in a host device designed for the other. Sdhc. The Secure Digital High-Capacity format, announced in January 2006 and defined in version 2.0 of the SD specification, supports cards with capacities up to 32 GB. The Sdhc trademark is licensed to ensure compatibility. Sdhc cards are physically and electrically identical to standard capacity SD cards. The major compatibility issues between Sdhc and Sdsc cards are the redefinition of the card-specific data register in version 2.0, and the fact that Sdhc cards are shipped pre-formatted with the FAT32 file system. Version 2.0 also introduces a high-speed bus mode for both Sdsc and Sdhc cards, which doubles the original standard speed clock to produce 25 MB/s. Sdhc host devices are required to accept older SD cards. However, older host devices do not recognize Sdhc or Sdxc memory cards, although some devices can do so through a firmware upgrade. Older Windows operating systems released before Windows 7 require patches or service packs to support access to Sdhc cards. Sdxc. The Secure Digital Extended Capacity format, announced in January 2009 and defined in version 3.01 of the SD specification, supports cards up to 2 TB, compared to a limit of 32 GB for Sdhc cards in the SD 2.0 specification. Sdxc adopts Microsoft's Exfat file system as a mandatory feature. Version 3.0 also introduced the ultra-high-speed bus for both Sdhc and Sdxc cards, with interface speeds from 15 bytes to 104 bytes for 4-bit ASI bus. Version 4.0, introduced in June 2011, allows speeds of 156 bytes to 312 bytes over the 4-lane ASI bus, which requires an additional row of physical pins. Exfat file system. Sdxc cards are pre-formatted with Microsoft's proprietary and patented Exfat file system. Microsoft does not publish the specifications of Exfat and its use requires purchase of a license, so many alternative or older operating systems do not support Exfat even if they support the Sdxc card reader hardware. This means that Sdxc cards using Exfat are not a universal exchange medium to all Sdxc host devices. Windows XP and Apple both support Exfat and Sdxc. However, BSD and Linux systems do not support Exfat out of the box. There is an open-source implementation available as a Fuse module. Sdxc cards can be reformatted to use alternative file systems. For example, FAT32 supports volumes up to the Sdxc's maximum theoretical capacity of 2 TB and can be used in a Sdhc host device that can handle volumes larger than 32 GB. However, using alternative file systems bears a risk of accidental loss of data, as the host device may treat a card with an unrecognized file system as blank or damaged and reformat the card. The SD Association provides a formatting utility for Windows and Mac OS X that checks and formats SD, Sdhc, and Sdxc cards. Ultra-high-speed bus. The ultra-high-speed bus is available on some Sdhc and Sdxc cards. The following ultra-high speeds are specified: USI cards, specified in SD version 3.01, support a clock frequency of 100 MHz, which in 4-bit transfer mode could transfer 50 MB per second. USI cards declared as UHS 104 also support a clock frequency of 208 MHz, which could transfer 104 MB per second. Double data rate operation at 50 MHz is also specified in version 3.01, and is mandatory for micro-Sdhc and micro-Sdxc cards labeled as USI. In this mode, 4 bits are transferred when the clock signal rises and another 4 bits when it falls, transferring an entire byte on each full clock cycle. USI cards, defined in version 4.0, further raise the data transfer rate to a theoretical maximum of 156 MB per second or 312 MB per second using additional row of pins. US memory cards work best with US host devices. The combination lets the user record HD resolution videos with tapeless camcorders while performing other functions. It is also suitable for real-time broadcasts and capturing large HD videos. Cards that comply with US show Roman numerals I or 2 next to the SD card logo, and report this capability to the host device. Use of USI requires that the host device command the card to drop from 3.3 volt to 1.8 volt operation and select the 4-bit transfer mode, while USI requires 0.4 volt operation. Sdio. A Sdio card is an extension of the SD specification to cover I/O functions. Sdio cards are only fully functional in host devices designed to support their input-output functions. These devices can use the SD slot to support GPS receivers, modems, barcode readers, FM radio tuners, TV tuners, RFID readers, digital cameras, and interfaces to Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Ethernet, and IRDA. Many other SDIO devices have been proposed, but it is now more common for I/O devices to connect using the USB interface. Sdio cards support most of the memory commands of SD cards. Sdio cards can be structured as 8 logical cards, although currently, the typical way that an Sdio card uses this capability is to structure itself as 1 I/O card and 1 memory card. The Sdio and SD interfaces are mechanically and electrically identical. Host devices built for Sdio cards generally accept SD memory cards without I/O functions. However, the reverse is not true, because host devices need suitable drivers and applications to support the card's I/O functions. For example, an horsepower Sdio camera usually does not work with PDAs that do not list it as an accessory. Inserting an Sdio card into any SD slot causes no physical damage nor disruption to the host device, but users may be frustrated that the Sdio card does not function fully when inserted into a seemingly compatible slot. Compatibility. Host devices that comply with newer versions of the specification provide backward compatibility and accept older SD cards. For example, Sdxc host devices accept all previous families of SD memory cards, and Sdhc host devices also accept standard SD cards. Older host devices generally do not support newer card formats, and even when they might support the bus interface used by the card, there are several factors that arise. A newer card may offer greater capacity than the host device can handle. A newer card may use a file system the host device cannot navigate. Use of an SDIO card requires the host device be designed for the input-output functions the card provides. The hardware interface of the card was changed starting with the version 2.0 and Sdhc family bus. Some vendors produced Sdxc cards above 1 GB before the SDA had standardized a method of doing so. Speeds. An SD card's speed is measured by how quickly information can be read from, or written to, the card. With early SD cards the speed was specified as a times rating, which compared the average speed of reading data to that of the original CD-ROM drive. This was superseded by the speed class rating, which guarantees a minimum rate at which data can be written to the card. The newer families of SD card improve card speed by increasing the bus rate. Whatever the bus rate, the card can signal to the host that it is busy until a read or a write operation is complete. Compliance with a higher speed rating is a guarantee that the card limits its use of the busy indication. Speed class rating. The SD Association defines standard speed classes indicating minimum performance to record video. Both read and write speeds must exceed the specified value. The specification defines these classes in terms of performance curves that translate into the following minimum read-write performance levels on an empty card and suitability for different applications. Speed classes 2, 4, and 6 assert that the card supports the respective number of megabytes per second as a minimum sustained write speed for a card in a fragmented state. Class 10 asserts that the card supports 10 MB per second as a minimum non-fragmented sequential write speed and uses a high-speed bus mode. The host device can read a card's speed class and warn the user if the card reports a speed class that falls below an application's minimum need. By comparison, the older rating measured maximum speed under ideal conditions, and was vague as to whether this was read speed or write speed. USI and USI cards can use US speed class rating with two possible grades, Class 1 for minimum read-write performance of at least 10 MB per second and Class 3 for minimum write performance of 30 MB per second, targeted at recording 4K video. Before November 2013, the rating was branded as speed grade and contained grade 0 and 1. Manufacturers can also display standard speed class symbol alongside US speed class. A Euro rating. The A Euro rating, made obsolete by speed classes, is a multiple of the standard CD-ROM drive speed of 150 KB per second. Basic cards transfer data at up to 6 times the CD-ROM speed. That is, 900 KB per second or 7.37 Mbps. The 2.0 specification defines speeds up to 200 A, but is not as specific as speed classes are on how to measure speed. Manufacturers may report best-case speeds and may report the card's fastest read speed, which is typically faster than the write speed. Some vendors, including Transcend and Kingston, report their card's write speed. When a card lists both a speed class and an A Euro rating, the latter may be assumed a read speed only. Real-world performance. In applications that require sustained write throughput, such as video recording, the device might not perform satisfactorily if the SD card's class rating falls below a particular speed. For example, a high-definition camcorder may require a card of not less than Class 6, suffering dropouts or corrupted video if a slower card is used. Digital cameras with slow cards may take a noticeable time after taking a photograph before being ready for the next, while the camera writes the first picture. The speed class rating does not totally characterize card performance. Different cards of the same class may vary considerably while meeting class specifications. A card's speed depends on many factors, including the frequency of soft errors that the card's controller must retry, the fact that, on most cards, writing data requires the controller to read and erase a larger region, then rewrite that entire region with the desired part changed, file fragmentation, where there is not sufficient space for a file to be recorded in a contiguous region, it is split into non-contiguous fragments. This does not cause rotational or head movement delays as with electromechanical hard drives, but may decrease speed. For instance, by requiring additional reads and computation to determine where on the card the file's next fragment is stored. In addition, speed may vary markedly between writing a large amount of data to a single file and writing a large number of small files. One study found that, in this random access use, some Class II cards achieved a write speed of 1.38 MB per second, while all cards tested of Class 6 or greater, including those from major manufacturers, were over 100 times slower. Features: card security. Cards can protect their contents from erasure or modification, prevent access by non-authorized users, and protect copyrighted content using digital rights management. Commands to disable writes. The host device can command the SD card to become read-only. There are both reversible and irreversible host commands that achieve this. Write Protect Notch. The user can designate most full-size SD cards as read-only by use of a sliding tab that covers a notch in the card. When looking at the SD card from the top, the right side must be notched. On the left side there may be a write protection notch. If the notch is omitted, the card can be read and written. If the card is notched, it is read-only. If the card has a notch and a sliding tab which covers the notch, the user can slide the tab upward to declare the card read-write, or downward to declare it read-only. The diagram to the right shows a green sliding write protect tab in both the unlocked and locked positions. The presence of a notch, and the presence and position of a tab, have no effect on the SD card's operation. A host device that supports write protection should refuse to write to an SD card that is designated read-only in this way. Some host devices do not support write protection, which is an optional feature of the SD specification. Drivers and devices that do obey a read-only indication may give the user a way to override it. Cards sold with content which must not be altered are permanently marked read-only by having a notch and no sliding tab. Card password. A host device can lock an SD card using a password of up to 16 bytes, typically supplied by the user. A locked card interacts normally with the host device except that it rejects commands to read and write data. A locked card can be unlocked only by providing the same password. The host device can, after supplying the old password, specify a new password or disable locking. Without the password, the host device can command the card to erase all the data on the card for future reuse, but there is no way to gain access to the existing data. Drm Copy Protection. All cards incorporate Drm Copy Protection. Roughly 10% of the storage capacity of an SD card is a protected area not available to the user, but is used by the on-card processor to verify the identity of an application program that it then allows to read protected content. The card prohibits other accesses, such as users trying to make copies of protected files. The Drm scheme embedded in the SD cards is the content protection for recordable media specification of the 4C entity, which features the cryptomeria cipher. The specification is kept secret and is accessible only to licensees. The scheme has not been broken or cracked. However, this feature of SD cards is rarely used to protect content. DVD audio uses the same Drm scheme. Windows media files can be DRM encoded so as to make use of the SD card's DRM abilities. Windows Phone 7 devices use SD cards designed for access only by the phone manufacturer or mobile provider. An SD card inserted into the phone underneath the battery compartment becomes locked to the phone with an automatically generated key so that the SD card cannot be read by another phone, device, or PC. Symbian devices, however, are some of the few that can perform the necessary low-level format operations on locked SD cards. It is therefore possible to use a device such as the Nokia N8 to reformat the card for subsequent use in other devices. a superdigital product formerly made by SuperTalent, was essentially the SD card without the DRM features. Vendor enhancements. Vendors have sought to differentiate their products in the market through various vendor-specific features. Integrated Wi-Fi. Several companies produce SD cards with built-in Wi-Fi transceivers supporting static security. The card lets any digital camera with an SD slot transmit captured images over a wireless network, or store the images on the card's memory until it is in range of a wireless network. Examples include iFi/SanDisk, Transcend, Toshiba, PQI Card and ISShare. Some models geotag their pictures. Preloaded content. In 2006, SanDisk announced Gravy, a microSD card with extra digital rights management features, which they intended as a medium for publishing content. SanDisk again announced preloaded cards in 2008, under the Slot Music name, this time not using any of the DRM capabilities of the SD card. In 2011, SanDisk offered various collections of 1,000 songs on a single Slot Music card for about $40, now restricted to compatible devices and without the ability to copy the files. Integrated USB connector. The SanDisk SD Plus product can be plugged directly into a USB port without needing a USB card reader. Other companies introduced comparable products, such as the Duo SD product of OCZ Technology and the three-way product of A-Data, which was available in 2008 only. Different colors. SanDisk has used various colors of plastic or adhesive label, including a gaming line in translucent plastic colors that indicated the card's capacity. Integrated display. In 2006, A-Data announced a SuperInfo SD card with a digital display that provided a 2-character label and showed the amount of unused memory on the card. History. In 1999, SanDisk, Matsushita, and Toshiba agreed to develop and market the secure digital memory card. The card was derived from the MultiMediaCard and provided digital rights management based on the Secure Digital Music Initiative standard and a high memory density for the time. It was designed to compete with the Memory Stick, a DRM product that Sony had released the year before. Developers predicted that DRM would induce wide use by music suppliers concerned about piracy. The trademarked SD logo was originally developed for the Super Density disc, which was the unsuccessful Toshiba entry in the DVD format war. For this reason the D within the logo resembles an optical disc. At the 2000 Consumer Electronics Show trade show, the three companies announced the creation of the SD Association to promote SD cards. The SD Association, headquartered in San Ramon, California, United States, comprises some 30 product manufacturers that make interoperable memory cards and devices. Early samples of the SD card became available in the first quarter of 2000, with production quantities of 32 and 64 MB cards available 3 months later. Mini and micro cards. In March 2003, SanDisk Corporation announced the introduction of the Mini SD and demonstrated it at CeBIT 2003. The SDA adopted the Mini SD card in 2003 as a small form factor extension to the SD card standard. While the new cards were designed especially for mobile phones, they are usually packaged with a Mini SD adapter that provides compatibility with the standard SD memory card slot. At CTIA Wireless 2005, the SDA announced the small microSD form factor. SanDisk had conceived microSD when its CTO and the CTO of Motorola concluded that current memory cards were too large for mobile phones. The card was originally called T-Flash, but just before product launch, T-Mobile sent a cease and desist order to SanDisk claiming that T-Mobile owned the trademark on T-Anything, and the name was changed to TransFlash. TransFlash and microSD cards are the same. Each can be used in devices made for the other. SanDisk induced the SDA to administer the microSD standard. The SDA approved the final microSD specification on July 13, 2005. Initially, microSD cards were available in capacities of 32, 64, and 128 MB. In September 2006, SanDisk announced the 4GB Mini Sdhc. Like the SD and Sdhc, the Mini Sdhc card has the same form factor as the older Mini SD card, but the HC card requires HC support built into the host device. Devices that support Mini Sdhc work with Mini SD and Mini Sdhc, but devices without specific support for Mini Sdhc work only with the older Mini SD card. Sdio, Sdhc and Sdxc. In April 2006, the SDA released a detailed specification for the non-security-related parts of the SD memory card standard and for the secure digital input-output cards and the standard SD host controller. The Sdhc format, announced in January 2006, brought improvements such as 32 GB storage capacity and mandatory support for FAT32 file systems. In January 2009, the SDA announced the Sdxc family, which supports cards up to 2 TB and speeds up to 300 MB per second. It features mandatory support for the Exfat file system. Sdxc was announced at Consumer Electronics Show 2009. At the same show, SanDisk and Sony also announced a comparable memory stick XC variant with the same 2 TB maximum as Sdxc, and Panasonic announced plans to produce 64 GB Sdxc cards. On March 6, 2009, Preetk introduced the first Sdxc card, a 32 GB card with a read-write speed of 400 Mbps. But only early in 2010 did compatible host devices came onto the market, including Sony's Handycam HDR CX55V camcorder, Canon's EOS 550D digital SLR camera, a USB card reader from Panasonic, and an integrated Sdxc card reader from Micron. The earliest laptops to integrate Sdxc card readers relied on a USB 2.0 bus, which does not have the bandwidth to support Sdxc at full speed. Also in early 2010, commercial Sdxc cards appeared from Toshiba, Panasonic, and SanDisk. In early 2011, Centon Electronics, Incorporated and Lixor began shipping Sdxc cards rated at speed class 10. Preetk offered cards from 8 GB to 128 GB rated at speed class 16. In September 2011, SanDisk released a 64 GB micro Sdxc card. KingMax released a comparable product in 2011. In late 2012, Lixor released the first 256 GB Sdxc card, based on 20nm flash technology. In April 2012, Panasonic introduced Micro P2 card format for professional video applications. The cards are essentially full-size Sdhc or Sdxc ASII cards, rated at US speed class U1. An adapter allows Micro P2 cards to work in current P2 card equipment. Panasonic Micro P2 cards shipped in March 2013 and were the first ASII-compliant products on market. Initial offer includes a 32 GB Sdhc card and a 64 GB Sdxc card. In February 2014, SanDisk introduced the first 128 GB micro Sdxc card. Markets: secure digital cards are used in many consumer electronic devices, and have become a widespread means of storing several gigabytes of data in a small size. Devices in which the user may remove and replace cards often, such as digital cameras, camcorders, and video game consoles, tend to use full-sized cards. Devices in which small size is paramount, such as mobile phones, tend to use micro SD cards. SD cards are not the most economical solution in devices that need only a small amount of non-volatile memory, such as station presets and small radios. They may also not present the best choice for applications that require higher storage capacities or speeds as provided by other flash card standards such as compact flash. Many personal computers of all types and personal digital assistants use SD cards either through built-in slots or through an active electronic adapter. Adapters exist for the PC card, Express Bus, USB, FireWire, and the parallel printer port. Active adapters also let SD cards be used in devices designed for other formats, such as compact flash. The flash path adapter lets SD cards be used in a floppy disk drive. Fakes. Commonly found on the market are mislabeled or counterfeit secure digital cards that report a fake capacity or run slower than labeled. Digital cameras, SDMMC cards replaced Toshiba Smart Media as the dominant memory card format used in digital cameras. In 2001, Smart Media had achieved nearly 50% use, but by 2005 SDMMC had achieved over 40% of the digital camera market and Smart Media's share had plummeted by 2007. At this time all the leading digital camera manufacturers used SD in their consumer product lines, including Canon, Casio, Fujifilm, Kodak, Leica, Nikon, Olympus, Panasonic, Pentax, Ricoh, Samsung, and Sony. Formerly, Olympus and Fujifilm used XD picture cards exclusively, while Sony only used memory stick. By early 2010 all three supported SD. Some prosumer and professional digital cameras continue to offer compact flash either on a second card slot or as the only storage, as CF supports much higher maximum capacities and faster transfer speeds and historically was cheaper for the same capacity. Secure digital memory cards can be used in Sony Sdhc AMX camcorders with an adapter and in Panasonic P2 card equipment with a micro P2 adapter. Personal computers. Although many personal computers accommodate SD cards as an auxiliary storage device through a built-in slot or a USB adapter, SD cards cannot be used as the primary hard disk through the onboard ATA controller because none of the SD card variants support ATA signaling. This use requires a separate SD controller chip or a SD to compact flash converter. However, on computers that support bootstrapping from a USB interface, an SD card in a USB adapter can be the primary hard disk, provided it contains an operating system that supports USB access once the bootstrap is complete. Since late 2009, newer Apple computers with installed SD card readers have been able to boot in Mac OS X from SD storage devices, when properly formatted to Mac OS extended file format and the default partition table set to GUID. Problems with using an SD card as the primary hard disk include the speed of the card, and that intensive writes to the card reduce its rated lifespan. Embedded systems. In 2008, the SDA specified embedded SD, lever-ag, in well-known SD standards to enable non-removable SD-style devices on printed circuit boards. SanDisk provides such memory components under the INAN brand. Most modern microcontrollers have built-in SPI logic that can interface to an SD card operating in its SPI mode, providing non-volatile storage. Even if a microcontroller lacks the SPI feature, a feature can be emulated by bit banging. For example, a homebrew hack combines spared general-purpose input-output pins of the processor of the link-size WAT54G router with MMC support code from the Linux kernel. This technique can achieve throughput of up to 1.6 Mbps. Technical details, physical size. The SD card specification defines 3 physical sizes. The SD and Sdhc families are available in all 3 sizes, but the Sdxc family is not available in the mini size, and the Sdio family is not available in the micro size. Smaller cards are usable in larger slots through use of a passive adapter. Standard size. SD, Sdhc, Sdxc, Sdio, 32.0A, 24.0A, 2.1 32.0A, 24.0A, 1.4 for thin SD, mini size, mini SD, mini Sdhc, mini Sdio, 21.5A, 20.0A, 1.4 micro size. The micro form factor is the smallest SD card format. Micro SD, Micro Sdhc, Micro Sdxc, 15.0A, 11.0A, 1.0 transfer modes. Cards may support various combinations of the following bus types and transfer modes. The SPI bus mode and 1-bit SD bus mode are mandatory for all SD families, as explained in the next section. Once the host device and the SD card negotiate a bus interface mode, the usage of the numbered pins is the same for all card sizes. SPI bus mode. Serial peripheral interface bus is primarily used by embedded microcontrollers. This bus type supports only a 3.3-volt interface. This is the only bus type that doesn't require a host license. 1-bit SD bus mode, separate command and data channels and a proprietary transfer format. 4-bit SD bus mode, uses extra pins plus some reassigned pins. ASI and ASII requires this bus type. The physical interface comprises 9 pins, except that the mini SD card adds 2 unconnected pins in the center and the micro SD card omits one of the 2 VSS pins. Notes: direction is relative to card. I equals input, O equals output. PP equals push-pull logic, OD equals open drain logic. S equals power supply. North Carolina equals not connected. Interface. Command interface. SD cards and host devices initially communicate through a synchronous 1-bit interface, where the host device provides a clock signal that strobes single bits in and out of the SD card. The host device thereby sends 48-bit commands and receives responses. The card can signal that a response will be delayed, but the host device can abort the dialog. Through issuing various commands, the host device can determine the type, memory capacity, and capabilities of the SD card, command the card to use a different voltage, different clock speed, or advanced electrical interface, prepare the card to receive a block to write to the flash memory, or read and reply with the contents of a specified block. The command interface is an extension of the multimedia card interface. SD cards dropped support for some of the commands in the MMC protocol, but added commands related to copy protection. By using only commands supported by both standards until determining the type of card inserted, a host device can accommodate both SD and MMC cards. Electrical interface. All SD card families initially use a 3.3-volt electrical interface. On command, Sdhc and Sdxc cards switch to 1.8-volt operation. At initial power-up or card insertion, the host device selects either the serial peripheral interface bus or the 1-bit SD bus by the voltage level present on pin 1. Thereafter, the host device may issue a command to switch to the 4-bit SD bus interface, if the SD card supports it. For various card types, support for the 4-bit SD bus is either optional or mandatory. After determining that the SD card supports it, the host device can also command the SD card to switch to a higher transfer speed. Until determining the card's capabilities, the host device should not use a clock speed faster than 400 kHz. SD cards other than Sdio have a default speed clock rate of 25 MHz. The host device is not required to use the maximum clock speed that the card supports. It may operate at less than the maximum clock speed to conserve power. Between commands, the host device can stop the clock entirely. Sdio cards. The Sdio family comprises low-speed and full-speed cards. Both types of Sdio cards support SPI and 1-bit SD bus types. Low-speed Sdio cards are allowed to also support the 4-bit SD bus. Full-speed Sdio cards are required to support the 4-bit SD bus. To use a Sdio card as a combo card, the host device must first select 4-bit SD bus operation. Two other unique features of low-speed Sdio are a maximum clock rate of 400 kHz for all communications, and the use of pin 8 as interrupt to try to initiate dialogue with the host device. Ganging cards together, the 1-bit SD protocol was derived from the MMC protocol, which envisioned the ability to put up to 3 cards on a bus of common signal lines. The cards use open collector interfaces, where a card may pull a line to the low voltage level. The line is at the high voltage level if no card pulls it low. Though the cards shared clock and signal lines, each card had its own chip select line to sense that the host device had selected it. The SD protocol envisioned the ability to gang 30 cards together without separate chip select lines. The host device would broadcast commands to all cards and identify the card to respond to the command using its unique serial number. In practice, cards are rarely ganged together because open collector operation has problems at high speeds and increases power consumption. Newer versions of the SD specification recommend separate lines to each card. Achieving higher card speeds, the SD specification defines 4-bit wide transfers. Transferring several bits on each clock pulse improves the card speed. Advanced SD families have also improved speed by offering faster clock frequencies and double data rate. File system: like other types of flash memory card, an SD card of any SD family is a block addressable storage device, in which the host device can read or write fixed-size blocks by specifying their block number. MBA and FAT: most SD cards ship pre-formatted with one or more MBA partitions, where the first or only partition contains a file system. This lets them operate like the hard disk of a personal computer. Per the SD card specification, an SD card is formatted with MBR and the following file system: for Sdxc cards, capacity of less than 32,680 logical sectors, FAT12 with partition type 1 hour and BPB 3.0 or eBPB 4.1, capacity of 32,680 to 65,535 logical sectors, FAT16 with partition type 4 hours and BPB 3.0 or eBPB 4.1, capacity of at least 65,536 logical sectors, FAT16B. With partition type 6 hours and eBPB 4.1. For Sdhc cards, capacity of less than 16,450,560 logical sectors, FAT32 with partition type OBH and eBPB 7.1, capacity of at least 16,450,560 logical sectors, FAT32X with partition type OCH and eBPB 7.1. For Sdxc cards, Exfat with partition type 7 hours, most consumer products that take an SD card expect that it is partitioned and formatted in this way. Universal support for FAT12, FAT16, FAT16B, FAT32 and FAT32X allows the use of Sdsc and Sdhc cards on most host computers with a compatible SD reader, to present the user with a familiar method of named files in a hierarchical directory tree. On such SD cards, standard utility programs such as Mac OS X's Disk Utility, or Windows ScanDisk can be used to repair a corrupted filing system and sometimes recover deleted files. Defragmentation tools for FAT file systems may be used on such cards. The resulting consolidation of files may provide a marginal improvement in the time required to read or write the file, but not an improvement comparable to defragmentation of hard drives, where storing a file in multiple fragments requires additional physical, and relatively slow, movement of a drive head. Moreover, defragmentation performs writes to the SD card that count against the card's rated lifespan. The write endurance of the physical memory is discussed in the article on flash memory. Newer technology to increase the storage capacity of a card provides worse write endurance. When reformatting an SD card with a capacity of at least 32 MB, but not more than 2 GB, FAT16B with partition type 6 hours and eBPB 4.1 is recommended if the card is for a consumer device. FAT16B does not support cards above 4 GB at all. The Sdxc specification mandates the use of Microsoft's proprietary Exfat file system, which is supported only by some proprietary operating systems. Other file systems, because the host views the SD card as a block storage device, the card does not require MBR partitions or any specific file system. The card can be reformatted to use any file system the operating system supports. For example, under Windows, SD cards can be formatted using NTFS and, on later versions, Exfat. Under Mac OS X, SD cards can be partitioned as GUID devices and formatted with the HFS Plus file system or still use Exfat. Under Unix-like operating systems such as Linux or FreeBSD, SD cards can be formatted using the UFS, X2, X3, X4, BTRFS, HFS+, RazorFS or F2FS file system. Any recent version of the above can format SD cards using the UDF file system. Additionally, as with live USB flash drives, an SD card can have an operating system installed on it. Computers that can boot from an SD card instead of the hard disk drive may thereby be able to recover from a corrupted hard disk drive. Such an SD card can be write-locked to preserve the system's integrity. Risks of reformatting. Reformatting an SD card with a different file system, or even with the same one, may make the card slower, or shorten its lifespan. Some cards use wear leveling, in which frequently modified blocks are mapped to different portions of memory at different times, and some wear leveling algorithms are designed for the access patterns typical of FAT12, FAT16 or FAT32. In addition, the pre-formatted file system may use a cluster size that matches the erase region of the physical memory on the card. Reformatting may change the cluster size and make writes less efficient. Sdxc memory cards have a protected area on the card for the SD standard security function. A standard formatter may erase it, causing problems if security is used. The SD Association provides freely downloadable SD formatter software to overcome these problems for Windows and Mac OS X. The SD formatter does not format the protected area, and the association recommends the use of appropriate application software or SD-compatible device that provides SD security function to format the protected area in the memory card. Power consumption. The power consumption of SD cards varies by its speed mode, manufacturer and model. During transfer it may be in the range of 66 € 330 MW. Specifications from TwinMOS Technologies list a maximum of 149 MW during transfer. Toshiba lists 264 € 330 MW. Standby current is much lower, less than 0.2 mA for one 2006 microSD card. If there is data transferred for significant periods, battery life may be reduced noticeably. Modern SDI cards can consume up to 2.88 W, if the host device support bus speed mode SDA104 or RZE. Minimum power consumption in case of an SDI host is 0.72 W. Storage capacity and incompatibilities. All SD cards let the host device determine how much information the card can hold, and the specification of each SD family gives the host device a guarantee of the maximum capacity a compliant card reports. By the time the version 2.0 specification was completed in June 2006, vendors had already devised 2 GB and 4 GB SD cards either as specified in version 1.01, or by creatively reading version 1.00. The resulting cards do not work correctly in some host devices. Sdxc cards above 1 GB. A host device can ask any inserted SD card for its 128-bit identification string. In standard capacity cards, 12 bits identify the number of memory clusters and 3 bits identify the number of blocks per cluster. The host device multiplies these figures with the number of bytes per block to determine the card's capacity in bytes. SD version 1.00 assumed 512 bytes per block. This permitted Sdxc cards up to 4096 or 512 or 512 equals 1 GB, for which there are no known incompatibilities. Version 1.01 let an Sdxc card use a 4-bit field to indicate 1024 or 2048 bytes per block instead. Doing so enabled cards with 2 GB and 4 GB capacity, such as the Transcend 4 GB SD card and the Memoret 4 GB SD card. Early Sdxc host devices that assume 512-byte blocks therefore do not fully support the insertion of 2 GB or 4 GB cards. In some cases, the host device can read data that happens to reside in the first 1 GB of the card. If the assumption is made in the driver software, success may be version dependent. In addition, any host device might not support a 4 GB Sdxc card, since the specification lets it assume that 2 GB is the maximum for these cards. Storage capacity calculations. The format of the card-specific data register changed between version 1 and version 2.0. Version 1. In version 1 of the SD specification, Capacities up to 2 GB are calculated by combining fields of the CSD as follows. Capacity equals C size plus 1, 2, C size MULT plus 2 plus read BLN, where 0 equals C size less than or equal to 4095, 0 equals C size MULT less than or equal to 7, read BLN is 9 or 10. Later versions state that a 2 GB Sdxc card shall set its read BLN to indicate 1024 bytes, so that the above computation correctly reports the card's capacity. But that, for consistency, the host device shall not request block lengths over 512 bytes. Versions 2 and 3, in the definition of Sdhc cards in version 2.0, the C-size portion of the CSD is 22 bits and it indicates the memory size and multiples of 512 KB. 2 bits that were formerly reserved now identify the card family, 0 is Sdxc. 1 is Sdhc or Sdxc. 2 and 3 are reserved. Because of these redefinitions, older host devices do not correctly identify Sdhc or Sdxc cards nor their correct capacity. Sdhc cards are restricted to reporting a capacity not over 32 GB. Sdxc cards are allowed to use all 22 bits of the C-size field. An Sdhc card that did so would violate the specification. A host device that relied on C-size rather than the specification to determine the card's maximum capacity might support such a card, but the card might fail in other Sdhc-compatible host devices. Capacity is calculated thus. Capacity equals C size plus 1 closing round bracket times 524,288, where for Sdhc 4112 equals C size less than or equal to 65,375 capacity less than 32 GB, for Sdxc 65,535. Equals C size 32 GB equals capacity less than or equal to 2 TB max. Capacities above 4 GB can only be achieved by following version 2.0 or later versions. In addition, capacities equal to 4 GB must also do so to guarantee compatibility. Openness of specification. Like most memory card formats, SD is covered by numerous patents and trademarks. Royalties for SD card licenses are imposed for manufacture and sale of memory cards and host adapters, but Sdio cards can be made without royalties. Early versions of the SD specification were available only after agreeing to a non-disclosure agreement that prohibited development of an open-source driver. However, the system was eventually reverse-engineered, and free software drivers provided access to SD cards that did not use DRM. Since then, there has provided a simplified version of the specification under a less restrictive license. Although most open-source drivers were written before this, it has helped to solve compatibility issues. In 2006, the SDA released a simplified version of the specification of the host controller interface and later also for the physical layer, ASSD extensions, SDIO, and SDIO Bluetooth Type A, under a disclaimers agreement. Again, most of the information had already been discovered and Linux had a fully free driver for it. Still, building a chip conforming to this specification caused the One Laptop Per Child project to claim the first truly open-source SD implementation, with no need to obtain an SDI license or sign NDAs to create SD drivers or applications. The proprietary nature of the complete SD specification affects embedded systems, laptop computers, and some desktop computers. Many desktop computers do not have card slots, instead using USB-based card readers if necessary. These card readers present a standard USB bus storage interface to memory cards, thus separating the operating system from the details of the underlying SD interface. However, embedded systems usually gain direct access to SD cards and thus need complete programming information. Desktop card readers are themselves embedded systems. Their manufacturers have usually paid the SDA for complete access to the SD specifications. Many notebook computers now include SD card readers not based on USB. Device drivers for these essentially gain direct access to the SD card, as do embedded systems. The SPI bus interface mode is the only type that doesn't require a host license for accessing SD cards. Comparison to other flash memory formats. Overall, SD is less open than compact flash or USB flash memory drives. Those open standards can be implemented without paying for licensing, royalties, or documentation. However, SD is much more open than memory stick, for which no public documentation nor any documented legacy implementation is available. All SD cards can be accessed freely using the well-documented SPI bus. XD cards are simply 18-pin NAND flash chips in a special package and support the standard command set for raw NAND flash access. Although the raw hardware interface to XD cards is well understood, the layout of its memory contents are unnecessary for interoperability with XD card readers and digital cameras is totally undocumented. The consortium that licenses XD cards has not released any technical information to the public. Table data compiled from MMC, SD, and SDIO specifications from SD Association and Sdhc websites. Data for other card variations are interpolated. See also, comparison of memory cards, serial peripheral interface bus, flash memory, universal flash storage, references. External links, official website, official SD simplified specification is free, official SD full specification is $1,000/year, SD format for SD/SDHC/SDxc cards, SD card. Interfacing to SD cards, Elmchner. Interfacing AVR to SD cards, see source code, Tamani-Tecker. Interfacing ARM to SD cards, see source code, DE, Uniclac. Interfacing MSP430 to SD cards, see source code, Michigan State University. Interfacing MAXQ2000 to SD cards, good technical descriptions, see source code, Maxim Iker. SD card controller, Verilog source code, OpenCoreISA.